My bad. I was like, oh, fuck, I didn't even see you.
USS Texas. That'd be better probably.
I love this guy, man. This is how we roll in Hawaii. This is how we roll in Hawaii. Okay? We're all in Ohana. What is Ohana? Family. What is Mahalo? What the,
Thank you.
Huh?
Thank you.
No, that means free lunch. Big fella's mine.
Family. Ohana.
Stick to the script. Stick to the script. You know, ladies and gentlemen, you guys are on vacation, okay? This is supposed to be fun, okay? But you got to be safe, okay? So, ladies and gentlemen, repeat after me. Tough crowd there, Jazzy. Tough crowd. You know, ladies and gentlemen, this lady broke her ankle several months ago. It does happen, so be safety conscious. Walking on the decks of Missouri, trip hazards, be careful. Going up and down the ladders, face the ladders, handle to the handles. Go up and down the ladders slowly. Let's not get fancy schmancy to start sliding down the handles, okay? I'm not pointing at her. Come over here. Item. Now, beware of the low overheads, a lot of matter of breakfast. How tall are you, sir? 6'5". Play basketball?
Not anymore.
Play mini golf, okay? Tough sport. So be careful, the low overheads, and you guys take pictures. Take pictures, a lot of selfies, okay, guys? We're not pointing at smiley here. But don't walk and take pictures at the same time. Very dangerous, okay? Stay hydrated. We do have water refill station, water fountains, restroom. The guys will show you where it's at. Face mask policy is optional. And you guys enjoy it, folks. Be safe, okay? Thank you. You guys scan your tickets over here, brother. You can scan your tickets. There are tickets. Welcome. guided tour is more than that.
She's not there today. We're in the beautiful sunny day of Hawaii. So the USS Missouri Memorial Association quietly dealt with the Navy and asked to give the Missouri a new mission. And they were successful. So in 1998, she was sailed back here and she opened up as a memorial and gave her first tour on January 29th of 1999, which was the 55th anniversary of her christening. Today, the Missouri stands open as an educational resource and a symbol of peace to all nationalities and generations that come aboard. And we stand bow to bow, or nose to nose, with the USS Arizona, bookending the very beginning and end of World War II for the United States. Do you guys have any questions so far about her brief history? I know it's very brief, so. So I'm going to tell you guys about the Missouri size. Now, she's a gorgeous ship. From one end to the other, she measures 887 feet, 3 inches long, about 3 American football fields. From her keel all the way up to her mast, she measures 216 feet, 6 inches, or about a 20-story building. From one side to the other, she stands a very narrow 108 feet 2 inches, which is a very specific number because during the 1940s she had to fit through the Panama Canal. The Panama Canal then only measured 110 feet on either width. So that means she had less than 1 foot on either side of her to pass through those locks. But it was crucial that she did that because it was the cheapest and fastest way to make her way from the Atlantic to the Pacific. When she's fully loaded, she has a weight of 58,000 displacement tons, about half that of a modern-day Carnival cruise ship fully loaded. At her top speed, she's recorded going 33 knots, which is about 40 miles an hour on land, which doesn't seem super fast, but imagine something like this driving next to you on the freeway outside. Yeah, not something I want to see moving next to my Subaru, right? The Iowa-class battleships were built for speed, and they were some of the fastest ships during World War II. Do you guys have any questions about her specs and her size? No questions so far? Okay, well we'll go ahead and start talking about the guns, right? On board, we have 9 16-inch 50 caliber rifles. Each single one of these rifles weighs 239,000 pounds, about the size of a modern-day NASA space shuttle. Each of these rifles can operate up and down independent of the others, and each turret can rotate from port to starboard independent, so we can have 9 different targets at any given time. Now, whenever you're loading one of these rifles, you would load it at about a 5-degree angle, and it can go up to 45 degrees in 4 seconds. With a good crew, you could load them once every 30 seconds, so you can fire 2 times per minute. Once that round is in the barrel and it's out, it's going all the way over Oahu, 22 nautical miles or 26 statute miles on land. So we can hit anywhere on the island if we were operable. Now it travels at 26 miles in just about 91 seconds, going at speeds at 2,500 feet per second, Mach 2, twice the speed of sound. Now, of course, you have a big gun. What do you fire from it except for a big round? So right down there, we have an example of our AP, or armor-piercing round. So that would be designed to go through about 30 feet of concrete or 17 inches of steel plating and then detonate. Now, a single AP round weighs 2,700 pounds, about the size of a modern-day Honda Civic. We could also have a high-capacity explosive, which was designed for land targets. Now, it could leave a crater about 50 feet wide and 20 feet deep, about the size of a tennis court. A high-capacity round, and that weighed about 1,900 pounds, a little bit lighter. To fire a single round, no matter the type, requires 6 bags of gunpowder. 1 bag of gunpowder weighs 110 pounds. So 660 pounds, 2 times per minute, for as long as you need to fire. And that's why I don't want some supplies, right? I like math, but not that much. Now, in order to run one of these turrets, it would require a minimum crew of 77 people. So they average about 96 people. So during World War II, when your crew size was about 3,000 sailors, 300 of them were dedicated to the turret operations. It's quite crowded in there, as you can imagine, but it's even more crowded when you factor in that there's a recoil system. Those black coverings on our gun are protecting our recoil system, which allows the Missouri to stay stable in the water whenever they're being fired. Now, it allows the rifles to be absorbed into the turret to absorb that shock, to make sure that the ship doesn't suffer any structural damage. Otherwise, we could move just about as much as 40 feet in the water every single time one of those guns is moved. Yep, not an ideal form of transportation. Boats aren't designed to move sideways. Now, I'm going to start moving on to the next part of our tour, which is the surrender deck. It's one of the most historic parts of our ship. It's going to be 10 steps up and then 10 steps down. Is there anybody who would require assistance with the ADA elevator? Just go ahead and raise your hand. Nobody yet? All right, I'm going to ask everybody to be careful whenever we're moving over there, regardless of your ability to walk. And please follow me. as we don't block this fire lane right here, we should be good. Like this way, for people to stop. Come on in. There's room up here if you guys want to come on in. I'm not shy. I just love speaking for a living, so. As long as you guys don't block the fire lane right here, we'll be good. Thank you. So I'm going to set the scene a bit for you guys today. So it would have been a very gray and cloudy, overcast day, the Sunday of September 2nd, 1945. The Missouri was stationed in Tokyo Bay, surrounded by more than 200 Allied ships. At about 9 o'clock that morning, the Japanese delegation would make their way on board. Can you not block the fire away from me? Thank you. The Japanese delegation would come up the same exact stairs that we just did, and they'd take their place here on the deck. This delegation was led by number 22, Mr. Shigemitsu. He was the foreign minister for Japan, and he was there representing Emperor Hirohito. They were also led by number 24, which is General Umezu. He was the representative of the Imperial Army for Japan. Once they had taken their place on the deck, General MacArthur, Admiral Nimitz, and Admiral Halsey would descend from that area over there, the Admiral's quarters, and make their way down the steps to take their place on the deck. This ceremony would start at 9:02 with an opening prayer from the chaplain and opening statements from General MacArthur. Now, General MacArthur's statements, the Japanese people were afraid that he would make a statement about a regime of vengeance because the Japanese people knew that what they had done is wrong, but they were here for Japan's unconditional surrender. So if General MacArthur is about to give a statement about a negative regime, that's what they were going to have to accept. Thankfully, though, General MacArthur did not give that statement. He instead gave a speech emphasizing freedom, justice, and tolerance towards the Japanese people. This was very respectfully translated by number 27 here on board. The young-looking man is Mr. Kaze. Mr. Kaze was a graduate of Harvard, and he would later go on to write a book about his experience aboard the Missouri and about the respect that he held for General MacArthur. General MacArthur, in particular, would be responsible for a huge amount of effort in the rebuilding of Japan later on in the session. Now, all the opening statements are out. The Japanese delegation is feeling much more relieved, so they would start signing the documents. Now, they would sign 2 copies of the documents, one for Japan and one for the Allied forces. General MacArthur would call forward Shigemitsu and Umezu to sign and then step back. General MacArthur would then make his way around the table and seat himself and motion for 2 gaunt-looking men to come and stand behind him. These men were number 2 and number 3, Lieutenant General Wainwright of the United States and Lieutenant General Percival of Great Britain. Both of these men had been prisoners of war in Manchuria for more than 3 years. For perspective, the average life expectancy for a prisoner of war at the time was 3 to 6 months. At the time of the surrender ceremony, both men stood over 6 feet tall, but neither weighed more than 100 pounds. They were there to represent all prisoners of war from World War II. Now, General MacArthur, when he sat down, would also put out beside him 6 pens. He would use all 6 pens to sign his name on both copies of the documents of surrender. The first 2 of those pens he would pass behind him to Wainwright and Percival to honor their sacrifices. Now, General MacArthur was not signing for the United States. He was instead signing as the Joint Allied Commander. He would pass it off to Admiral Nimitz to sign for the United States, followed by representatives from China, Great Britain, the USSR, Australia, Canada, France, the Netherlands, and New Zealand. Now, all in all, the ceremony, which began at 9:02, would conclude just at 9:25. So only 23 minutes to officially end World War II. I wish all ceremonies were that quick nowadays. Of course, the world was very anxious to hear what had happened aboard the Missouri, so General MacArthur would go on broadcast that day and say some of the following words. Today, the guns are silent. A great tragedy has ended. A great victory has been won. The skies no longer rain death. The seas bear only commerce. Men everywhere walk upright in the sunlight. The entire world lies quietly at peace. And this was a wonderful message for a world that really needed to hear it at the time. A conservative estimate of casualties in World War II is about 69 million. But most people tend to forget that of those, about 50 million were civilian casualties. Now here on our deck, we actually have inlaid in our teakwood a plaque that denotes the exact position where the documents of surrender were signed, and it's there to commemorate all of those who sacrificed for our victory and our peace. So I'm going to give you guys a little bit, probably about 5 minutes, to go ahead and explore the surrender deck. Please make sure that you ask questions if you need to, and go ahead and look into the captain's quarters. I'll meet you there. service on here when she was active in the 80s and 90s, just like anybody else. The people on board here wanted to have basketball and they had free time. They wanted to be able to play sports. On modern ships, you know, my husband plays his Switch. They play Mario Kart. But basketball, I think, is a little bit healthier. So in the 80s and 90s, the Harlem Globetrotters came on board to do community service with crew members and to play with them. So that's why we have it out here. Alrighty. So, does anybody know what the word kamikaze means besides the word for the drink?
Divine wind.
Divine wind. Yep. So Americans know the word to mean kamikaze, suicide bomber. However, the actual origin of the word is much older. It means divine wind. So back in the 13th century Japan, the Mongolian forces attempted to invade Japan 2 times by ocean. And both of those times, the Mongolian forces were wiped out by typhoons. Now, they didn't have meteorologists back then, so all they saw was an invading force and a storm that wiped them out. They believed that their gods had saved them from invasion, so they named these typhoons kamikaze, divine winds, because they saved them from being invaded. Now fast forward to the 1940s. Japan is rapidly losing the ability to wage war, their industrial complex is failing, and they just lost a series of really critical military encounters. They are not looking to be invaded because they have never been invaded in their life and they've never lost a conflict. So they're not looking to surrender and start that record now. So they start the kamikaze program to try to artificially recreate that event that saved them from being invaded in the 13th century. This program would recruit young men as young as 17 years old give them a little bit of training, a plane, a bomb, and sometimes just enough fuel to make a one-way trip. They would tell these men to fly into Allied warships just to cause as much damage as possible. It's estimated that about 4,000 pilots were sacrificed in this effort on Japan's part. And these attacks were devastating. They would start at the Battle of Leyte in 1944, and they continue all the way through the Battle of Okinawa in 1945. In the Battle of Okinawa alone, the United States lost 34 ships to kamikaze attacks. It's about 5,000 American sailors at the time. So why am I telling you this? Because obviously the Missouri is here. There's no hole in the side of our ship. We're still operable. We went through the Korean and Gulf Wars, but we did suffer and survive a kamikaze attack, or at least an attempt of one. So April 11th of 1945, we were anchored in Okinawa, and at about 2:30 that afternoon, a lone pilot was seen coming in over the starboard aft over here. So of course, when we see that pilot, we're not going to sit here and do nothing. This deck would have been covered with anti-aircraft guns, and every single one of them would have been aimed at that pilot trying to take it down, because they knew if this pilot hit, that it could just become another ship that had gone down just like the others they'd seen in Okinawa. Now, they were mostly successful in deferring this plane. However, it did come in close, and the pilot managed to bring it up and to shear off its left wing here on the side of the ship, hitting the Missouri. Though thankfully, the main part of the plane and the bomb it was carrying fell harmlessly into the ocean of Okinawa and did not detonate. Though the plane that it sheared off, that was the wing that it sheared off was a bigger problem. It had spewed aviation fuel all over this deck here, and it started a fire. The fire that started reportedly reached well above the mast of the Missouri. The other ships that were there in Okinawa believed the Missouri had been fully hit and was going down. Thankfully, though, that was not the case. The damage controlmen that day were on point and managed to take that fire out in less than 3 minutes. When they were assessing their damages, they also discovered that there were 0 casualties on board. Missouri had not suffered a single loss of life. But, even better, they didn't even have a hole in the side of their ship. It was just a fender bender essentially for the Missouri, and you can still see the dent today. Whenever I let you out, feel free to lean over the railing between 2 mooring pins over there. You can still see the original dent that's there. We've never needed to repair it. Now, when they were cleaning up the wreckage here on deck, they did discover that there was a body from the pilot. He had been ejected on impact and he was here on the deck. They did not know his identity, and we would not know his identity until about 2000, when we had a series of researchers that found out that he was possibly Petty Officer 2nd Class Setsuo Ishino. He was 19 at the time of his enrollment in the kamikaze program, and he was 22 at the time of his final flight. His family visited in 2001, and they donated 2 pictures for us to display for you guys. One is of him in his military uniform, and the other is of him and his family. He is 2 years old and holding a toy plane. Now, we have a body, it's unidentified, it's of an enemy. What do? So they were just going to throw it overboard and call it a day. However, the captain at the time, Captain Callahan, decided that's not what they were going to do. They were going to give him a burial at sea with honors. But this was quite controversial because the men had decided, they're like, he just tried to kill everybody, all 3,000 sailors on board. But the captain was very stern that this man has died. He is no longer an enemy, but a casualty of war. He was just doing for his country what we were doing for ours. And so that night, 3 signal corpsmen would stay up and hand sew together signal flags and bed sheets in order to make a Japanese rising sun flag for him to be buried in at sea the next day. And they would hold the burial at sea the next day, April 12, 1945 at 9 a.m. Here on our deck, we have the footsteps of where the procession stood. 5 Marines for a 15-gun salute, a caller, a bugler, a chaplain, and 6 pallbearers. Now they would lay him to rest in Okinawa, not knowing who he was, but honoring him nonetheless. Now this should have made front page news, especially in the 1940s, whenever World War II was a hot issue. The Missouri surviving a kamikaze attack would have been the best message that the newspapers could have given people, especially since they honored the person who had tried to kill them. However, that same day, April 12th of 1945, the passing of our president, Franklin Delano Roosevelt, would take front page of the news, and all eyes would be on the White House as Harry Truman took over the presidency. Now this brings us all the way back around full circle, as it was Harry Truman's daughter, Mary Margaret Truman, that had christened the ship in 1944, and Harry Truman himself was from Missouri. Just as I am, I actually grew up kind of near Truman, Missouri, which is the city we named after him because we liked him that much. Now, of course, that was why the Missouri was chosen for the surrender ceremony. As if you were president, wouldn't you choose your hometown, your home state, your home country to represent you on the world stage? And that is why the Missouri was chosen. Now this is the official end of our tour, but I'm going to give you guys some directions before I let you guys go. So again, if you want to discover the rest of the 05 levels and go all the way way to our open bridge, go back to the kamikaze deck, to the harbor side of our ship, and all the way up those ladders to the top. Have fun, hold on to your hats, it's quite windy. You will never be closer to the restrooms than you are right now. The women's are on this side, men are on the others, and there's a water bottle refill station next to the men's restrooms. Please make sure to get water and use restrooms now, as there are no restrooms in our second level museum. The museum is located just around the front of boat turret 3. There's a curved piece of metal with a door in the front. Just like Narnia, open it up, you're in a whole new world. Perfectly air-conditioned museum thanks to the Reagan administration's installation of the air conditioning. Now please enjoy it. You can go through all the cruise areas, the chiefs areas, and it lets you out in officer's country. But if you're interested in it, you can also look right up in here to turret number 3. You can step up like a meerkat and just see what it looks like on the inside. Thank you guys so much for being with me today. I hope you guys enjoyed the Missouri. Thank you.
Above it. Dent from the kamikaze attempt. Oh.
It's got that 2021, it says. That's what it looked like. It's got that in 2021.
Yeah, fades red.
Yeah, it is. I think his own bathroom too.
On the second level.